The story kicks off in 1944, right in the middle of World War II, with gunfire blasting in every direction. In this chaos, we find an American Marine captain named Allison, all alone and drifting on the vast Pacific Ocean. His team had been attacked by Japanese soldiers, but he miraculously survived and climbed into a rubber raft. He drifted for days, desperately fighting to stay alive. Allison kept pushing forward, completely alone, until he spotted an island in the distance. Without wasting a second, he paddled his raft hard, aiming straight for that glimmer of hope. When he finally reached the shore, he dragged the raft aside and anxiously looked around for any sign of life. But all he could see were endless trees and jagged rocks. Then, he noticed a church. Curiosity took over, and as he stepped inside, he was stunned to see a Catholic nun named Angela emerging. Angela was terrified at the sight of him, but Allison quickly calmed her down, saying, "Don't be afraid. I'm American. I mean you no harm," he asked Angela, his voice filled with curiosity. "How many people live here?" She softly replied, "I live here alone." Allison couldn't believe it. Angela led him to her shelter and kindly gave him some food. Still puzzled, Allison asked, "Why are you living here alone?" Angela's eyes turned sad as she explained, "I came here with a priest. We were supposed to rescue some elderly priests from the Japanese soldiers, but by the time we got here, the Japanese were already on the island and had taken them away. With the war raging all around, we decided to hide here for a while. But soon the priest I came with fell ill and died. Since then, I've been here all alone. My people probably thought the Japanese had captured me too, so no one came to save me." Allison then opened up and shared his own story. "I'm a Marine," he said. "Our group was attacked by Japanese soldiers, and I barely survived and made it here." After talking, Allison lay down for a while to catch his breath. When he woke up, he saw Angela lighting a candle and praying with all her heart for God's guidance. Later, they both ventured out together, looking for food. Allison climbed up a tree and plucked coconuts and fruits, tossing them down to Angela. But he knew they still needed some protein. Suddenly, he spotted a turtle in the sea. He grabbed a rope and some wood, hopped into the raft, and Angela joined him as they paddled hard toward the turtle. But catching it wasn't easy, and Allison fell right into the sea. Thankfully, Angela helped him, and they both managed to catch the turtle and climb back into the raft. They brought it back to the island, cooked it up, and shared it together. Allison told Angela with a confident grin, "We have everything we need on this island. Even if no one comes to rescue us, we'll survive." Angela gently asked him, "Who do you have in your family?" Allison looked at her and said, "I'm an orphan. Spent 14 years in an orphanage. After finishing my studies, I decided to join the army because I wanted to do something meaningful for my country." Angela listened closely and then shared, "I'm also an orphan. I have a lot of faith in God, which is why I chose to become a nun. This brings me peace and lets me help guide people to the right path." Allison and Angela were so different from each other. Angela was gentle and calm, filled with faith, and always praying with devotion. In contrast, Allison didn't believe much in religion and had a tough, determined edge to him. The next day, they spotted Japanese fighter planes roaring through the sky. Fear gripped them as Allison quickly pulled Angela into hiding, knowing that being seen could mean death. He whispered urgently, "We need to stay hidden for a few days. I found a cavedal. Be safer there." Angela nodded, and they spent the entire day safely tucked away in that dark, quiet cave. The next morning, they were jolted awake by the deafening sound of bombs exploding around them. Allison carefully peeked out of the cave and saw the Japanese planes raining down destruction all over the island. Angela's face went pale with terror, and she began to pray with all her heart. Allison held her close and soothed her, whispering words of comfort. When the planes finally disappeared, they stepped outside and saw total devastation everywhere. Their home and the church had been completely wiped out. Soon after, a Japanese unit arrived to set up a weather station on the island, and they smashed the raft Allison had used to reach safety. This sight made Allison and Angela rush back into the cave, their hearts pounding with fear. Japanese soldiers were everywhere, patrolling the island with watchful eyes. Allison stayed sharp and told Angela to stay hidden while he stood ready with his knife. But, thankfully, the soldiers didn't come into the cave and eventually moved away. Angela looked at Allison and said, "I'm going to surrender myself to the Japanese soldiers. I believe they won't hurt someone like me, a nun." This might give you a chance to escape," she added with a worried sigh. "We don't have any food left." But Allison shook his head and said, "We can't risk it. I could do anything to you. We have to stay hidden." That evening, Allison slipped out of the cave and saw that the Japanese had built several camps all over the island. He carefully dodged them and went to the other side of the island to catch some fish. But a few Japanese soldiers spotted him, so Allison quickly pretended to be dead. Convinced by his act, the soldiers walked away without a second glance. Allison then managed to catch some fish and brought them back to the cave to share with Angela. Angela had stopped eating fish ever since she became a nun, but with no other choice, she forced herself to eat it. Sadly, the raw fish made her so sick that she vomited and went to sleep hungry and weak that night. A while later, as Angela slept soundly, Allison quietly left the cave to keep an eye on what the Japanese soldiers were up to. He painted his face black so no one would spot him in the darkness. When he saw the perfect chance, he snuck right into their camp and began stuffing a bag full of food supplies. But just then, a soldier walked in, forcing Allison to stay completely still, hidden in the shadows. With no chance to run, he had to spend the entire night there, surrounded by danger. The next morning, while the soldiers were busy training outside the camp, Allison carefully sneaked out with the bag and hid it in a safe spot. Back in the cave, Angela woke up and saw that Allison was gone. Panic set in, and she burst into tears, thinking he might have been killed. But soon, Allison made it back to the cave safe and sound, and Angela was overjoyed to see him alive. Allison explained, "I went to the camp to get food." Angela's relief turned to anger as she scolded him. "You left without telling me." "I was so scared," Allison promised. "I won't ever do that again." The next day, Allison surprised Angela with a beautiful flower and a comb, and it brought a bright smile to her face. He gently asked her, "Dawn, do you ever wish to leave the life of a nun and live a normal life?" Angela looked thoughtful as she explained that she hadn't taken her final vows yet, and it takes 5 whole years of preparation to become a nun. So she was still deciding. Deep down, Allison had started to care for Angela, and didn't he want her to commit fully to the life of a nun? Just then, they heard noises outside, and peeked out to see that the Japanese soldiers were leaving the island. Both of them were overjoyed, and with the supplies left behind by the soldiers, they didn't have to worry about food anymore. Allison looked into Angela's eyes, and shared that he had always been alone since he was a child, facing challenge after challenge. But now, he wanted to find happiness with her, he bravely confessed. "I've fallen in love with you. I want you to change your mind about becoming a nun, and when this war is over, marry me." Angela was stunned and replied softly, "I have dedicated myself to God. I cannot betray my God to be with someone else." This broke Allison's heart, but he gently said, "If my words have hurt you, please forgive me." That night, after they finished their meal, Allison stumbled upon a bottle of Japanese liquor and ended up drinking way too much. In his drunken haze, he told Angela that her vows didn't mean anything, and compared their situation to Adam and Eve stuck on the island. Hurt by his words, Angela ran out into the rain and slept alone in the cold, dark forest. Allison desperately searched for her, but couldn't find her anywhere. The next morning, he finally found Angela lying unconscious. He gently picked her up in his arms and carried her back to the camp. But when he saw that the Japanese soldiers had come back, he quickly took Angela to the cave instead. Her condition was getting worse by the minute, so Allison took a huge risk and sneaked into the Japanese camp to steal blankets and medicine. A soldier caught him in the act, and Allison had to kill him with a knife, hiding the body carefully. Back in the cave, he changed Angela's wet clothes, gave her medicine, and, for the very first time, prayed to God for her safety. The next morning, Angela slowly woke up and asked softly who had changed her clothes. Allison told her that he had done it because of her condition. He apologized once more and said that everything he said last night had been because he was drunk. Angela listened and then forgave him with a gentle smile. Suddenly, they heard the terrifying sounds of bombs exploding outside. Allison rushed to look and saw that the Japanese soldiers had started bombing the island again, because they had found out that Allison had killed one of their men. Knowing they were now hunting for him, Allison told Angela everything that he had to kill the soldier to protect himself. Angela's heart sank, and she began to pray with tears in her eyes, asking for forgiveness. Meanwhile, Japanese soldiers showed up right outside the cave. One of them shouted with a harsh voice, If there's anyone inside, come out now, or we'll throw grenades in. Allison and Angela were trapped. They had only two choices: surrender or die from the grenades. Fear gripped them tightly as Angela started praying, convinced their end was near. But suddenly, a massive explosion rocked the ground, and the Japanese soldiers began to scream in terror. Allison realized with a rush of hope that the American Navy had started bombing the island. They stepped out of the cave and saw American planes soaring in the sky, blasting the Japanese troops. Their hearts filled with joy and relief. Allison looked serious and said, "The American soldiers won TB, able to land easily, because the Japanese have 4 cannons here. I have to disable them." He turned to Angela and said firmly, "God wants me to help the American soldiers." Angela looked at him with trust in her eyes and gave him permission to go. Allison slipped out of the cave and saw that most of the Japanese soldiers had already fallen. Dodging the raining bombs, he sprinted forward and took out each cannon one by one. Even though he got injured in the chaos, he didn't stop for a second. He disabled every single cannon, saving the lives of so many American soldiers in the process. Afterward, the American Navy finally stopped the bombing. Angela stepped out of the cave and hurried to treat Allison's injuries, her hands trembling with care. Allison looked into her eyes and said softly, "Now it's time for us to part ways. We may never see each other again." Angela's voice shook as she replied, "Even if I can't spend my life with you, you will always be close to my heart." Then, the American Navy landed on the island and proudly raised their flag. When the naval captain saw Allison alive, he was stunned. He had thought Allison was dead. They carefully lifted Allison onto a stretcher and carried him away, with Angela walking right beside him, her heart heavy yet full of hope. Allison never pushed his love onto Angela, and always respected her choice to become a nun. Angela, in turn, truly understood Allison's feelings. This story shows us that true love doesn't always mean staying together sometimes. Even when apart, hearts stay deeply connected.